Hi there. Welcome to Discussions with the Fascia Masters. My name is Deanna Hansen. I'm the founder of Fluid Isometrics and Block Therapy, and we have a very special guest today, Chris Burres. I had the wonderful opportunity to be interviewed by Chris for his Secret to Longevity Summit. And Chris, please come on out and share more about this, all about you, and let's get into some really cool discussions.
Deanna, thank you so much for having me today. It was great to connect with you on the summit. Actually, I just went back and re-listened to that interview. That was amazing. You shared some amazing information. The tie back to longevity is I think really important. And so I'm excited to kind of talk about other things that I also learned on that summit, as well as my book. Like, this is pretty exciting. It came out before we had the interview. I just haven't had time to even really talk with anybody about the book because of that longevity summit.
Well, it's so exciting. And I know you've got some really interesting things to share about what you're doing. You're a chief scientist. You've got all these cool things that you're doing. And I just want to really dive in because the goal here is that not only do we live a healthy life, but also a longer, healthier life. And I think you've got some pretty amazing insights that you're going to be sharing with our audience so that they can learn more about how to do that. And so, yeah, just dive in. And first of all, I guess what I'd love to hear is, how did you get started in this?
Okay, well, before we do that, I've been doing block therapy. I've got to share with you, and I actually made a modification that you might like. You might go, "Oh, Chris, don't do that." But I've gone through your intro course, which is like, I think 20 minutes, a bunch of 20 minutes, and then a full hour, almost at a full hour, almost at a full hour. I have thoroughly enjoyed, and it's painful, like, there's no doubt. It's breathe through the pain, find the pain, help the pain melt away. Um, but when we first connected for the interview and you talked about kind of reaching into your abdomen area and just there's something intuitively felt right about that pain, right? I get that, right? So after having done enough of it, I don't know, I'm at this point, I'm probably 10, 15 hours in. By the way, I took a trip and I've been under the weather, so haven't gotten back to it yet, but I will. There's something that does feel intuitively right about experiencing this pain, right? Like seeking out that pain and having it dissolve away. So that's great. Now, my the thing that I have kind of shortcutted, I can't even really, is I do a lot of extra T-band. So what's amazing about your program is, like, hey, you can sign up and then they've got, you're going to send them the block, one or two of the blocks, and you sent me both graciously. But hey, if you want to get started right away, roll up a towel and like just start jumping into this. So I actually use that roll up a towel. And so when I'm on the block in some other positions, I'll put a towel right on, on my T-band, or I'll put it on my quad, because that's usually pretty tight. So I'm like kind of tackling two areas at the same time. And so I feel like this is the classic mindset. Hey, if a little is good, then more has to be better. And so I just have found the program awesome. And so kudos to you. The platform is amazing. Yeah, everything
Well, just
about.
an FYI, when you actually dive into the membership, we have plenty of double blocking classes. So
Okay. So
there's so much more to come.
I do that sometimes. I skip to the advanced class without any instruction. And it's like, stop doing that. You're not qualified yet.
No, I think you are. I think you know your body pretty darn well.
Yeah, I think, I think if it's from time to time causing pain, yeah, I'm good at that. I can do that. So, um, like I mentioned, and I'll give background for everyone, right? All of this is covered in my book. It's Live Longer and Better, and the tagline is, your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today. Which obviously, like, seems like it fits really well into a longevity summit, right? Like, it's never been more achievable than today. Um, I got my start as a carbon nanomaterial scientist back when I was in college. And that's a mouthful. And I kind of like to joke that I'm a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist. And if there is such a thing, that I'm definitely that.
First of all, where do you buy the book, by the way?
Sits on Amazon. Yes, it's on our website.
Okay.
And on our website, there's a feature where you can get a signed copy of it. My
Oh,
co-author is a two-time New York Times #1 bestseller. So it's an achievement to get to bestseller. to get to number one is just off the charts. So I'm very proud to have worked with Dr. Jerome Corsi on that. And there's a $10 fee if you want one signature. There's a $15 fee if you want two signatures. The book is $20. But all of that fee actually goes to a charity organization called, well, it's abbreviated OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. There was a movie recently called
Yes,
The
Sound of
Sound of
Freedom.
Freedom.
Oh,
I
yes.
happened to see him speak. So the guy represented in this, by the way, it's the movie and the organization are about stopping childhood sex trafficking. Obviously, something we want to stop. And I happened to see him speak at an event just, I think, probably a week or 2 weeks before the movie came out. I was moved by just his speech, saw the movie. I didn't want to go back. I actually started watching it over again and was like, I don't need to watch it again. Like it's,
Yeah, no, it was hard to watch for sure.
yeah,
But you know what? People need to see it. And I fully
I,
agree. Like, we need to direct resources to this cause big time.
yeah, absolutely. And so 100% of the signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. And again, you can get that on the website. You can't get the signed copy. I guess I could figure out how to do that. But get it. You can't get it on Amazon. And so so you can find it from the website. And we'll have a link to the website below.
Awesome.
All right. So what is this book about? What is carbon nanomaterials? How is there such a thing as a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist? When I was in, I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I cover like why and what drove me to be an entrepreneur, and the fact that there was no internet, and like today, like I want to be an entrepreneur, and then you spend the next 25 hours watching guys and gals lean against Lamborghinis and try and weed through, where is the real meat in these opportunities. Back then there was no internet, and so I happened to find something that motivated me to become an entrepreneur, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And in fact, I went into school studying mechanical engineering because I felt it was I'm good in science, I'm good in math, and I felt it was the fastest way to the highest salary so that I could save money and start a business, right? Like this makes perfect sense. Also, there were I think there were only like 3 classes in entrepreneurship at the time. And I would tell you that even today, I might not have gone down an entrepreneurship pathway because that's not the pathway to the most amount of money in the quickest way, right? Like the logic for me was get money so I can buy a business. A couple things went wrong with that plan. But one of them, a very important one, is I met my business partner when we were in physics class, actually. And at the time, this molecule had just been discovered. So I'm holding up a model of a molecule. If you're listening, just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. It was discovered in 1985. The 3 scientists who discovered it won the Nobel Prize for that discovery in 1996. So a short 11 years from discovery to being awarded the Nobel Prize. And as I mentioned, we started our company in 1991. So between the discovery and the award of the Nobel Prize. The way it started, my business partner was actually working at the Texas Center for Superconductivity. That's another happy-go-lucky instance, right? And it's an organization that's housed on the University of Houston campus. One day, his professor, Dr. Paul Chu, is actually quite famous in the superconductivity world, came in and said, listen, you guys are really young kids. You're separating this molecule, this soccer ball shaped molecule. The molecule is selling for $6,000 a gram. You should probably go start a business. And my business partner was from an entrepreneurial background. I think he did a napkin calculation, which consisted mostly of $6,000 per gram. And then, yes, off and running, they're starting the business. To manufacture this molecule is actually incredibly challenging. By the way, it's a naturally occurring molecule. You can collect the soot from a candle, and you'll get parts per million, parts per billion of this molecule. And by the way, we call this molecule, if you're going to consume it, ESS60. So it's a naturally occurring molecule, but in order to get appreciable quantities, you actually do need to manufacture it. The way you manufacture it is you take 2 graphite rods and you kind of push them towards each other. And between those, you've got a plasma that is the temperature of the sun. So the local temperature of the sun. And you have to do this in a vacuum environment. So a slight vacuum. and with no oxygen. So you really have to have a vacuum chamber. You've got things sliding into the vacuum chamber. You got the temperature of the sun. And I was studying mechanical engineering, so they brought me on to help them design this piece of equipment, which, by the way, still to today is the most efficient fullerene ESS60 manufacturing equipment around. And we've actually toured the world to visit different pieces of equipment.
Okay, so first of all, just like congratulations. Like, holy
Thank
smokes,
you.
that's wild.
Yeah.
I still don't really know what this molecule does, but I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, the first part of what it does is going to make you nervous because you know it's a health supplement. I'm going to describe to you this molecule performs as good or better than the current best material in almost every industrial application. So it makes better inks, it makes better batteries, it makes better tires, it makes better photocells. We're actually not using it in all of those photocells. To some degree we are, because it's so expensive. But these are the things that, like no part of you is like, oh, inks, batteries, tires, photocells. I should probably, how much of that should I be consuming on a daily basis?
Right.
Right. Like this is where, and then the story actually even gets a little more nerve wracking because of the shapes on the exterior of the soccer ball shaped molecule. That are reminiscent of benzene, which is a known toxin and known to be carcinogen. They actually thought the molecule would be toxic, and they put it in a toxicity study. And my lab actually provided the material were mentioned in the peer-reviewed published paper that I don't know. I almost feel like I should slow down. I'm really excited today. So this peer-reviewed published paper mentions our lab in it. And instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case, it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group.
Come on, 90%.
90%.
Wow.
So you've got
Wow.
$6,000 a gram, significantly
Yeah.
more expensive than gold. Like that's a pivotal thing. And then 90%.
Holy
And
smokes.
that came out in mid 2012. And to
Okay.
kind of, again,
So
all
this
of
is
this
all
is
new. I mean, relatively speaking, this is all very new.
very much. This is absolute beta. Most of the people that are listening probably haven't heard of it. Most of their physicians haven't heard of it. Most of the scientists that I bump into haven't heard of it, whether it's on the industrial side or whether it's on, by the way, it is in current chemistry books. It's in high school chemistry, but it's just, it's just like a paragraph or two, which is kind of exciting. Something I've been
Kind of
working
like
with.
what fascia was back in the day.
Yeah, right. Like there's this thing, and then like yeah, and then let's go talk about the important parts. So, and I live in Houston, which is where they discovered it, where the two of the three scientists who won the Nobel Prize used to live, and so I do bump into people who have worked with them from time to time. I actually bumped into the man who married Dr. Smalley's widow, so he passed, and the guy who's married to his widow in line for an airplane to get on an airplane, which is just what a small world, right? I was hoping that I would be able to get a picture with the Nobel Prize. That would have been absolutely amazing, but that hasn't happened.
You're going to get one someday yourself. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. That's the hope. There are a couple of parts of this story that if I ever ended up with a Nobel Prize would fit this story. And one of the parts is if 6 years ago, right? So right before, even for a period of time after the publication where the test subjects lived 90% longer, if you had said, hey, Chris, you're gonna have a supplement company and you're gonna be talking about this research and you're gonna become a longevity expert, I would have said, no, like that's not happening. There's no path from happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist to a longevity expert. I don't know how that happens, but here we are. The next one is, and we'll kind of tease about some of the information about this longevity summit, is if 6 months ago you had said, Chris, you're going to do a longevity summit, you're going to interview 55 experts in longevity, you're going to interview some of the heavyweights that you've recently learned about because you're expanding your knowledge and becoming a longevity expert, like Dave Asprey, like Dr. Gundry, like Ben Greenfield. There's a guy, Sergey Young, who's probably a little lesser known, but that's the guy. He's a guy who hangs out with Elon Musk and Tony
I know
Robbins.
him. I actually sent him a letter a while back. So yeah, anyway,
yeah,
I know who he is.
He's an awesome guy. He invests in longevity. So it was a great addition to kind of the longevity interviews. But if you had said Chris, this is what you're going to accomplish in the next 6 months, I would have said, Deanna, I like to set myself up for success, not for failure. And so I'm just going to say no, because I don't know how I would do that. And I really didn't, I didn't have a path. And maybe this is, manifestation of future goals, because I certainly didn't picture that I was going to accomplish this and then manifest it. But manifesting it is probably moving in the right direction, certainly in sharing with more people this research, right? Which is absolutely one of my goals. So now here I am on the other side of this summit. It is actually coming out February 26th, and you're included. Amazing conversation. And then the 4 people that I mentioned and so many more, a total of 55 experts in longevity. I'm excited, and I certainly never thought I would be here. That all ties into, if I ever ended up with a Nobel Prize, I'm sure on the acceptance speech, I would be going, 6 years ago, if you had told me I was going to be getting a Nobel Prize, I would have said there's no path from this supplement guy to a Nobel Prize. So maybe it'll happen. I don't know.
Well, we're in the time of quantum leaps, so I have no doubt.
Yeah, I think sorry, I had to cough. I've had this chest congestion for a little while. I keep walking around the office coughing and saying it's getting better, and I think actually it is today. So that's good. Yeah, I think I lost my train of thought a little bit, but we can get back to the book, right? So
You're talking, yeah, let's get back to the book and what this molecule actually does for our health and longevity.
yeah, so and there's a lot more to the story. I talk about falling asleep in a car. Nothing happened, like nobody nobody got injured, including myself. So lucky. Certainly don't recommend that. I talk
Like
about
you were driving or you were a
I
passenger?
was driving, yeah.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, no, it's bad. And the reason I bring it up is because I had pulled an all-nighter to study, taken an exam, and was driving to the office, fell asleep, which is terrifying. And all that happened was like the car that was in front of me was now significantly closer than last I remembered. And this jolt of adrenaline just shot. I mean, we've all felt it at some point, just shot through my body. And I was like, okay, I'm awake now. And the scary part was like 15 seconds later, I was nodding again, right? Like, so anyway, I got to the office, and it was such an exciting time that I worked 8 hours. Like I worked 8 hours, didn't think about it. I wasn't falling asleep at work. Some of it, some manual stuff, and putting on a breathing mask to make sure I'm not inhaling the byproducts, and so, but that's how exciting things were back then, and that's kind of what's captured in this book. Now, when I start sharing the story, right? Well, first off, we didn't want to get into the supplement industry. Like, again, happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientists. This study comes out mid-2000, and that's mid-2012. Mid-2013, these crazy, wacky biohackers, which I can say now because I am one, started calling us and going, hey, how much in a dose? And we're like, wait a minute. Think about our conservative carbon nanomaterial hats on. We're like, wait a minute, you're asking us how much of this stuff that we sell to research institutions around the world to put in ink, batteries, tires, and photocells should you be consuming? The reality is approximately zero. Well, absolutely zero. And there was literature, right? Not just this study that showed it to be safe. We were just conservative scientists. And your knee-jerk reaction of like, if it's in a battery, I want to never consume it, right? If it's in tires, I'm not gnawing on tires. And that's where we kind of sat and we said, no, you shouldn't be consuming it. We actually added not for human consumption to our labeling. That was mid-2013 all the way to 2017 when a guy with a big YouTube following started talking about all the benefits he was getting taking it on a daily basis. Now, between 2013 and 17, we were getting 2 phone calls a week of these wacky, crazy biohackers sharing unbelievable testimonials. And in the early days, I'm answering the phone regularly, and I'm hearing these testimonials, and I'm having 2 reactions, right? So if it was you giving the testimony, I'm like, Deanna, I hear you and I believe you because you're one human communicating to another human. And then as the scientist, I'm going, this is anecdotal. Like, so what do I do with this belief that I'm kind of trained to ignore? Scientists are trained to ignore anecdotes, or or that's actually what people believe. The reality is anecdotes are really important. That's where the original hypothesis for any sort of experimentation ever happens. Like they don't just decide that, hey, we're gonna try penicillin in people and see what happens, right? They notice in a dish that the fungus, the existence of the fungus, is not allowing bacterial to grow around it, and they isolate what's in it. In this case, penicillin, and then now they have the theory, and now they test the theory. So anecdotal information is in fact really important. So we're getting 2 calls a week. My business partner are probably meeting quarterly. Like, do we want to get into the supplement industry? It's a very challenged, we'll call it a challenged industry, certainly compared to selling carbon nanomaterials to research institutions around the world. This is kind of night and day experiences. And we kept saying no. And again, until 2017, when that YouTuber starts talking about all the benefits he's getting, and our phone starts ringing 10 times a day. And so then we really did slow down, ask ourselves 2 questions. The first is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it? I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team here takes it. By the way, it's not a requirement. Like, you can work here and not take our product.
I have a question. I have a question. Where do
Yes.
these people get it from?
From us. So we
Oh.
actually had the product not for human consumption, so that they could, give it to perform their own rat study, right? And literally we would
Okay.
get phone calls of like, hey, my knee pain is gone. And we were like, you mean the knee pain of your rat, right? Because it says not for human consumption on the labeling. Yeah, sure. If I weigh 300 pounds, how much should I be taking? And we're like, none. Like, that's what the label says. So we're getting these testimonials, and it's just increasingly becoming clear this is having a positive impact in a lot of people's lives. And then again, our phone starts ringing 10 times a day, and the moral question, yes, we're comfortable selling it. The legal question, the FDA and the FTC, you got to cross some T's, dot some I's, and then off we're going. And that's kind of what brings us to here. And then my next step is, okay, first off, 90% extension of life sounds like a lot. Like, I've never heard of any studies that have suggested anything even close to that. But is it a lot? Like, are there other protocols that do extend life? And the next best way actually to extend life is calorie restriction, right? If you reduce your calorie consumption by 30%, you can extend your life by 30%. I call that the starve yourself 1/3 to death diet. And nobody likes to sign up for that diet, including myself. Maybe they need a new marketing team. And that's only a 30% extension of life. Laughing is the thing that really kills my cough, so I got to try and be careful. So that's only a 30% extension, and we're talking about, in this case, the Wistar rats having a 90% extension of life. So okay, so it's a big deal. This study's a big deal, and it is peer-reviewed, published research. And so I start digging into, well, what's next? Like, what other things, if I'm the one responsible for sharing this message, like, where does it sit in this landscape, right? So I start reading Lifespan. I start reading Dr. Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. Lifespan is Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. And Dr. Matthew Walker's book is Why We Sleep. Unfortunately, there is no add-on of and Why We Don't Have to. That would be kind of nice, but that is not an option. Great book, by the way. And the reason I picked up that book, that may not be obvious, right? Life extension. Why are you reading about sleep? Why does this get onto your radar? Our most consistent testimonial is our customers take it in the morning. They report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. And this is our most consistent testimonial. Great. Like, my wife and I just got back from Egypt. We don't miss a beat when we travel. I used to take I won't get into the details, but I used to take 2 naps before noon on Saturdays and Sundays. I don't do that anymore. So there's really kind of dramatic impacts on sleep. And so then, okay, well, what else helps with sleep? How important is sleep? So I just start going down kind of this massive rabbit hole, maybe an elephant hole. That doesn't make sense, but of trying to figure out, where does this fit and what does the space look like? And then the next thing, I've always thought of 2 things as it relates to knowledge. As you're accumulating knowledge, you should share it, right? And when you share it is when you really cement it in your own mind, right? And so that's what kind of drove the book initially, and then really kind of drove the summit ultimately, the longevity summit.
Holy smokes. Well, I mean, I just love this because I mean, same with me, right? Like you have to start somewhere and you start with yourself and then, you know, you share with other people and then suddenly they're sharing with other people. And then before you know it, holy smokes, here I am in my business. So how did you figure out how much for
How
people
much
to
to
take?
consume? Oh
Yeah.
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 So if you looked at by the way, remember this was a toxicity. I'll share a little bit more about the study. My director of research, who's a former practicing physician, said that initial paper could have been 5 separate papers, right? There's so much information in this initial paper. So one, rats live 90% longer. That's amazing. 2, a typical Wistar rat lives about 32 months and has a known amount of tumor mass in its body. So the longer it lives, the more tumor mass it accumulates in its body. Even though the myvital C rats lived out to 62 months, they all died without tumors. Now, this is, I tell this to some people like, oh, cure for cancer. No, that's not what we're saying. To deal with a cancer that has metastasized is extremely different than being a cancer preventative. We know things as simple as exercise and diet and good sleep are cancer preventative. So that indicates that we need a lot more research, that it has the potential to be have a positive impact on cancer. And I can share, we actually have cancer clinics that purchase our product on a regular basis. It's one of my goals. Actually, I sent out a phishing email. I was like, "Hey, everybody, let's do a conference together. And like, what's motivating you to include this in your protocol?" They're busy. That didn't happen, and I got busy too. So that's one piece of the study. And then the next thing that happens is people are like, "Well, what's the method of action? Like, how are these rats living longer?" And the medical community tends to look at, and there's always debate about this because it's a science and you should always be debating science, that aging is an oxidative and an inflammation process, right? So let's talk about oxidation. There's an ad hoc study on the web that shows our product to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. And then there's peer-reviewed published research that shows it to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So as an antioxidant, check. There's a new theory where we do know that this molecule, this soccer ball shaped molecule, ESS60, gets into the mitochondria, right? So it's small enough to get in there. So a lot of people, when they think of antioxidants, their first thought is vitamin C. Like that's probably the most common antioxidant. Vitamin C does not get into the mitochondria. And I wasn't going to go down this path, but I kind of put myself into a corner. So the mitochondria, as we know, is the powerhouse of every cell. Every cell in your body has between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in it. The only cells that don't are your hemoglobin cells. The purpose of the mitochondria is to really provide energy for the cell. So basically the food that we consume, as it gets pushed and processed and pushed into our bloodstream, the mitochondria takes those components, turns it into ATP, the power that's the energy source for the cells. Like most energy production things that we're aware of, like a car going down the road, you have exhaust. Like a smokestack at a power plant, you've got the smoke coming out of it. There are bad components as well as the energy. In the case of mitochondria, that's reactive oxygen species. These are the things that do the oxidative stress that ostensibly you're taking vitamin C for, right, to address. What's in-house for the mitochondria to manage these reactive oxygen species are 2 antioxidants. That's glutathione and melatonin. Interesting, melatonin, the sleep hormone, there's an association here. So what those do, and in kind of the example I have is this ESS60 molecule is in the mitochondria. We know it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles. These reactive oxygen species are negatively charged particles. So we believe it can hold up to 6 6 reactive oxygen species. I use this example just because it's fun. Picture Mardi Gras and Bourbon Street, right? And it's the end of Mardi Gras, and the reactive oxygen species are running up and down Bourbon Street, breaking lampposts, smashing windows, just causing problems like they do in our body, the reactive oxygen species. And the police, the glutathione and melatonin, are running around handcuffing themselves to these reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But when the glutathione and melatonin, we all know our body can get depleted from time to time. When the glutathione and melatonin get depleted, this acts like a paddy wagon. So it can hold on to those reactive oxygen species. So then when that mitochondria is able to replenish the glutathione and melatonin, it can then handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. So we call that BOSS, the buffering oxidative stress system. And that's kind of the antioxidant theory that really explains it's perplexing to try and explain head to toe testimonials, right? Because you're looking like, oh, this is great for your heart, or this is great for your liver. No, we just get testimonials across the board. So that's more in depth than I had planned on getting to, but that's the antioxidant state.
But I love that. And I love the analogies because I mean, same with what we're doing with fascia decompression, like it's where we're getting things across the board. And then it's like, it's hard to rationalize that when we come from such a different space. And when you have something that does benefit all systems. So and I just love that because like you can visualize it, like there's chaos and like, it's the takers of the chaos to bring order back into the system.
Yeah. And I think with the fascia, you kind of have two things. I was thinking about this morning. By the way, I thought I had an interview with you and I was really excited about it 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then it wasn't you. And I was like, all right, well, she'll be later. So I think with the fascia, one, you talk about blood flow, right? And increasing blood flow and obviously that's beneficial. I also think just taking the time out, right? Whether it's the 20-minute session or the full hour session, taking the time out to focus on your health, right, would be good. I think honestly, you could take a block and just sit on it for 1 hour if you're focused on your health. And it would be good. Like that would be good. Not as good as doing the actual block therapy, but when you carve out that time and you're really focused on your health, you get healthier. Like that's just what happens. Now, on top of it, you're doing things that increase blood flow, help your limbs move more freely. Like these are obviously of benefit. But you struggle. Okay, well, how did your migraines go away? You were sitting on this block, for X period of time for a couple weeks, and your migraine's gone, or whatever, your liver pain is gone. It's because you're focused on your health and because you're actually freeing up the blood flow. Same with us. We're trying to what's going on? Well, if you improve the mitochondria, if you improve how the powerhouse of every cell in your body operates, right, or at least reduce the negative byproducts of that process, then yeah, you're going to get head to toe testimonials. And so that's the antioxidant piece. When it comes to inflammation, the FDA, and I think this is the right approach, has equated inflammation with very specific diseases, the classic diseases of aging, right? What the FDA allows us to say is we address inflammation as it's associated with exercise-induced inflammation. So we've all had a tough workout or maybe just walked longer than we normally do and woken up the next day with that kind of inflammation in our body, and we absolutely address that type of inflammation. The chronic inflammation that's associated with Alzheimer's, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, actually cancers, we need more research to be able to support any sort of statements about those. And I think that's the FDA has the right approach there because they're really so commingled that it's important to have the research that's done. I can say, if you think about the blue zones, right? These are the zones of people around the world who tend to live longer, who tend to have reduced incidences of stroke, reduced incidences of heart attack. They're on an anti-inflammatory diet. Mediterranean diet is an anti-inflammatory diet, and our product fits perfectly in with an anti-inflammatory diet. So those are kind of the mechanisms that we're thinking are happening at this point.
So when you start taking this and these, police go and handcuff all the bad guys and pull them out, do you feel things like, I mean, with block therapy, we always talk about the healing crisis, which I prefer to term healing opportunities. Does your body go through like a letting go or a ridding of all that waste? And is there a process if you're really, really toxic to begin with? Can you take the same amount as somebody that's really healthy, or do you have to kind of gauge it based on how you're feeling through the journey?
Well, I think, and you kind of know the answer, right? I think you do have to gauge it for yourself. We've had people, my personal routine, we've got an MCT product, so I put it in my coffee. I put actually about a teaspoon and a half.
Is this a
Well,
powder?
say that again.
Is it a powder?
No, it's actually an oil. So it's
Oh,
this carbon molecule. By the way, the MCT is really cool because
okay.
the carbon molecule is a black powder. Not a surprise. It's carbon. Although
Right.
if you think about diamond, that might be a surprise. But it's a black powder. When you put it, if you've seen MCT oil is clear, basically. You put this black powder into MCT and it turns a beautiful purple color. Actually, that's why the box is purple. That's just how the chemistry works. And so I'll put that in my coffee, kind of like a bulletproof coffee kind of thing. I just leave out the ghee. And while that's blending, I'll actually take our olive oil product. So same deal. It's the ESS60 molecule dissolved in olive oil. And then I'll take about a teaspoon and a half of that. And then for lunch, I'm typically having a salad and I'll put our avocado product on that. And at the end, we can talk like, what my recommendation might be. But we've had people say if they take it too late in the day, it keeps them up. We've had people say if they take the full, typically teaspoon is the recommended serving in the morning, that it could keep them up at night. And so they'll back off. That's less than 1% of our clients. Everybody's going to have, some sensitivities. And I think some of it when it comes to going to sleep is when I go to sleep, my mind is active and I could like stay up and work or I could go to sleep. And it used to be a time, we've all had this where we're ruminating. We're like, how's the video shoot going to go tomorrow? Right. Or, how we're going to make this happen. And part of you is like, well, I probably shouldn't even try to sleep because that's just going to be a waste of time. That's how I feel typically. But when my head hits the pillow, I go to sleep. And so I think some people are like, have that sense of energy, that sense of lucidity, and then they're just not going to sleep because they're just not used to like trying to put their head down when their mind is that active. The same thing happens if I have to get up and use the restroom. I'm like up, active. I could get up and start working or whatever, go back to sleep, fall right back to sleep. And we actually did a small kind of human trial with sleep. So we surveyed people about their sleep 10 days before ever trying the product, 10 days while they were on the product, 10 days off the product, and then 10 days back on the product. 100% of the people who've gone through that have reported improvements in their sleep when they're on the product. So that's kind of the approach that we have related to sleep.
So how many people do you have taking this product in general?
Yeah, I think if you kind of group together, there's a reason that we created the nomenclature ESS60. So some people may know this as carbon 60, but carbon 60 is for industrial applications. And there's peer-reviewed published research that shows if you improperly process it, it's harmful. Still, there are people out there selling lots of C60. If you just throw in all of those together, I think that at this point, it's probably 50 to 70,000 people have tried the product, which is basically nothing, right? If you think about the millions of people that you could sell to. But we've got probably an active 5,000 customers who are on subscription taking the product regularly. And so, yeah, we've got quite a substantial amount of human beings who are taking this product on a regular basis. Now, I do want to get back. Some people don't notice anything, right? And I've got a kind of a story for you. Our largest distributor here in Houston, her name is Gwen. I did a video with her, and she shared that she originally ordered the product for her Shih Tzu, so her dog, had no intention of taking the product, but noticed such a profound difference in her dog that she was like, "Oh, I should probably take this." I just to pause. Whenever you're thinking about a supplement or even like, is block therapy, is it just a placebo? These are serious concerns that you want to have. By the way, I don't think it is. In our case, when you start thinking about pets, I don't know how you would get pets to sit on a block, but
Oh, I
in
got a
our
whole
case,
pet program, but you use your hands, not the block.
oh yeah, very
Oh
cool.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so and I'm sure that the dogs and cats, nobody does. I'll be honest, like our product line has a dog and cat. We almost don't sell any cat. Apparently, 9 lives is enough, I guess. That's what it seems to be. By the way, I always say if you're on Team Cat, you need to step up because you're not buying anything for your cat. So when a dog gets the product and the owner notices a substantial difference, there's no placebo. Like the dog isn't smart enough to go, oh, I got my dropper today, so I should be more youthful today. No, it just acts like it feels. So she starts taking the product, and I'm doing this interview with her, and she's like, hey, Chris, if you had asked me at the 3-month mark, had I noticed anything, I would have initially said no. By the way, this leads into the worst testimonial about a supplement in history. So that's the crescendo of this. So she goes, but I was taking stock of my life, and I'm working later than I used to. I'm waking up earlier. I was never a morning person. And then here's the worst testimonial ever. We don't use this in any of our literature. I cleaned my garage, right? So bad for marketing, but it does actually mean something, right? What's holding you back from cleaning your garage, whether it's the emotional baggage of the stuff that's in your garage, whether it's just the energy and the time. Like, do you have the time at the end of the day or on the weekend or whatever? I used to say I used to take 2 naps before noon on Saturday and Sunday. Well, when I'm not doing that, my garage gets cleaned, and that is actually because of my Vital C. So she shared that, having not noticed, and we have a number of people who will go off the product and then like, oh wait, now I notice, and now it's important. Like I had we were in a different office, and there was a lady next door, and she was talking about she was former military, so happy to help her in this context. She was talking about some oncology treatments and that she couldn't afford the normal regimen. Like I don't understand how that works, right? But here's some bottles. Like I want you to have this. And she started taking it, and I got back to her a couple weeks later, and I was like, so have you noticed anything? And she was like kind of disappointed to share with me that she hadn't noticed anything. And I said, well, how's your sleep? And her eyes just got like big as Bambi. And she's like, oh, I've been waking up at 5:30 every morning. Yeah, because sleep is one of the things that we get regularly. My business coach says for 50 years, I needed an alarm clock. When I'm on my Vital C, I'd wake up before my alarm clock. And he's a business coach. He's networking all the time. So he's got late nights, he's got early nights. And when he's taking the product, he's actually waking up before the alarm.
Wow. So we've got this soccer ball molecule that's going inside the body. And I mean, we're carbon-based humans. So I just find it interesting because, I mean, first of all, kudos to the people that, took that stretch to try it first. But whatever gave you the insight to try it on the rats in the beginning?
Yeah, I would love to say that I'm really smart and I
Oh, I
commissioned
think you
this
are.
particular study. Once again, had you told me a study was going to be done and test subjects were going to live 90%, and it's interesting because that puts me in a unique position because I'm not vested in this, right? I am, right, because this is what I do every day, but I'm not vested from the perspective of I created it. I'm a genius. I believe I'm a genius who went into a lab and threw this molecule into some olive oil, MCT oil, and avocado oil, and then the rats live 90% longer. And I'm like, see how smart I am? No, it's just I accidentally ended up in this position. And remember, it was a toxicity study. So the reason they did the toxicity study is because it's great in inks, batteries, tires, and photocells. And the concept was, well, humans will be working with this regularly, and we need to understand the toxicity level. By the way,
Okay.
rats
That makes
have
sense.
inhaled it. It's
Yeah.
been, injected perinatally, which is like just between organs. All sorts of things have been done, and there are no negative side effects if it's processed properly, right? And that's what we call ESS 60. And another note, because you asked about dosing, and I don't think I actually answered that question, is when you do your first toxicity study on anything, you do not give like, let me give a little bit to the rats and see if they feel unwell. You give as much as you possibly can to the rats and see if they die. Like that is how a toxicity study works. I know it sounds brutal and people don't like it, but that is what a toxicity study looks like. So when it came to looking at, hey, how much should we be taking? If you just took a milliliters per kilogram ratio and applied it to humans, we would need to drink a cup, I think it was 1.2 cups of olive oil with as much of this molecule that you can get into it. I think you can imagine that's not happening. 1.2 cups of olive oil. I can't even cook with, like, I don't, that's what you fry stuff in, maybe. That's not what you're consuming. But that's the wrong calculation, right? Because there's a difference between rats and monkeys and pigs and humans, and that difference is our metabolism. And by the way, this is where it gets kind of bizarrely geeky, and I really enjoy this. The way that you map metabolism between different species is you actually look at the surface area of the animal. So more surface area, slower metabolism, less surface area, higher metabolism, right? So rats have higher metabolism. So when you take into account that surface area, that's called an allometric calculation, that gets you down to about 5 milliliters for the average human.
Okay. Wow. Wow. That's a lot to take in. This is very exciting. So,
yeah.
and you're really just at the beginning of this journey. And okay. So in your mind, what's your goal age to live to?
Oh, that's a great question. So I've had a goal for a very long time, and I'll share some stats because I asked that question, as you know, of every expert. My goal still sits at 125. I believe that's going to be adjusted, and that just sits at 125 based on where we're at today. And then the next question is, how long can humans live? I actually think that we can live forever. And so the question is, why isn't that my goal? Well, because it's got the caveat. Well, I guess my goal is forever, right? But the caveat is where we're at today, it's 25. Now, think about this. This is kind of cool. Asked 55 longevity experts, how long do you want to live and how long can humans live? Only 3 people, including myself just now, only 3 gave the same number.
Huh.
Right? Like that, it seems like if I believe we can live this far, why isn't that your goal? And that really speaks profoundly to how we can't separate living longer with living infirmed. Right? Because when I ask, hey, would you like to live longer? Would you like to live past 95, past 100, hit Jean Clement's age of 122 and beyond? And most people are just like, they can't picture that happening without a lot of negative experiences that they don't want to have. But if you change the question, right? So Deanna, if you had the same mental capacity that you have today, and you had the same physical capacity that you have today, would you then be interested in living longer? By the way,
My question would be like, do I have the same freedoms that I have?
Right. No, well, then you start getting philosophical, right? Because,
Right, you do.
if this country goes to hell in a handbasket.
Because I think my answer was more philosophical, but it's funny too, because I think about it all the time, and the way that I see what really causes ultimately the death moment is full-on compression. So the work that we do is fascia decompression. As long as we keep the space, why does the cell ever go through any structural changes, and why does the body go through any changes to health in general? If we keep that space available, then because if compression is what ultimately causes death, if you go backward through time, how long do we live? So yeah, it's fascinating.
Right. Well, and think about your own kind of physical journey and like, where are you compared to where you were? And if you stay on that same trajectory, what's the end point?
Well, if I was where I was at the age of 25 and I continued on that trajectory, I think I would have been dead a long time ago, to be honest. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
right.
And so you're so much healthier and happier and mindful if you just keep on that trajectory from that to now, like the sky's the limit. So I thought that was really, these are longevity experts, and some of them, Dave Asprey's was a little more, his answer was a little more esoteric. I just want to get to some age where I go start meditating in a cave and then step out of my body and go do something else, right? So, and his target is well kind of advertised as 180.
Mm.
And that really goes from 50. I knew there was equation. He's very equation oriented. He's a computer scientist kind of background. That's where the phrase biohacking comes from that hacker computer hacking community. By the way, hacking is not all bad. A lot of people, I don't know if it's a lot. There's a number of people who are like, biohacking just sounds like you're doing bad things to your body. No, you're actually pushing your body to be the best that it can possibly be. And his number 180 comes from just taking the kind of the current standard life and adding 50% to it, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting to have that number. By the way, if the average human lives 90% longer, right, than they do today, the average human will live to 152. Now there's a bell curve around that. That's not the, like, as soon as you hear 152, you're probably hearing, oh, the oldest person. No, that's where the average person dies. And so I'm certainly very optimistic about what we're going to see here in the future.
Well, and
And
there's no question, I mean, if we want to actually push the boundaries, we have to push the body. We can't be the same versions of what we've been if we want to create change. And that's why it's so exciting, because we've got all these amazing minds that are, pushing through ideas and thoughts and coming up with things. And I love it, because I mean, I think some of the most beautiful things happen when we don't anticipate or actually have the goal to make them happen. They're nature's accidents, where we find, wow, this is doing this, and then you go down that path, and that's the fun part. I think that's the God part. Like, you can have
yeah,
these linear goals, but when you allow yourself to kind of flow through life and be open to what those other edges provide for you, I feel that's often where those real gifts of genius come from.
yeah, I think it's when you allow yourself to say yes to a longevity summit, that literally, when they suggested you need to do 35 to 40 interviews, not even counting like the heavyweights that I ended up with. I was like, I'll probably hit 25 and then we'll see what happens. Maybe they won't be happy with me, but I think that's a doable target. More than doubled that. Certainly with the help of a lot of the connections that I have and introductions. And then on top of that, you had Greenfield and Asprey and Gundry, who I had, very, very cursory relationships with, and was able to put that together. It's just amazing. And I think, a lot of your listeners are going to really enjoy, it's free, right? So you can attend it for absolutely free. And they can certainly get your talk in that same fee for free. Yeah. So I agree. It's like, how did I end up here is kind of just by saying yes. And where is that gonna take me? And it is really exciting. Throw this in there, right? So in 1950, medical information doubled every 50 years, 50 years. Today, medical information doubles every 73 days.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? So less than 3 months, 4 times a year, it's doubling. Wow, like that's just insane. That number is a fairly recent number, doesn't include AI.
Huh. Wow. Okay.
Ironically, I used AI to do like a calculation. Where are we going to be in 10 years? And it's like 15 minutes. Like it'll double every 15 minutes. So if you believe that it's possible, right, that there's a way to manipulate our physiology, right, then we're going to figure it out, and we're going to figure it out a lot faster than we realize. And the example that David Sinclair, Dr. David Sinclair, he's a Harvard medical research, not a doctor, but a Harvard medical researcher. What he points out is like, okay, so Deanna, you can take any cell on your body and you could actually clone a baby Deanna. If you can do that, what that means is every cell in your body has the information for a younger you, has what we should be able to manipulate to create a younger you. And if you're in line with that premise, then it's just a matter of figuring out the science to be able to manipulate that, and then that's going to happen, knowing that information is doubling every 73 days right now
Do you believe
without
that in the
AI.
past, like, I mean, ancient past, people lived much longer than they do today? So
Yeah,
really, it's kind of the offshoot of that, where we have manipulated the body, and now therefore we have to find our way back to what we actually were in ancient times before we got to this point in time. So it's like we're just coming full circle so many times. I feel it's kind of wild.
It's kind of interesting because this is like a I don't know, a way out there theory, which is I mentioned that this molecule is found in a candle flame. And so, and I think you're talking, there's biblical references of people living, you know, certainly multi hundreds, if not into 800 years of age. Maybe the light source that we were using was more prone to creating more of this ESS60 molecule, and that we've fallen off our access to this particular molecule, which I don't know. I like wacky idea. I like that. We'll throw that into the conspiracy idea, and they're fun to talk about.
Cool. I'm sure we could talk for hours upon hours and just have a blast. But thank you so much. I'm super honored that I was invited to be part of your summit. It's really cool that I can be in the company of all these incredible scientists and people that are movers and shakers in the world, including yourself. And I would love to see you win the Nobel Prize, 6 years from now, and to call you my friend, even that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, definitely friends. And you're in the right circle. You deserve to be here because I really enjoyed our conversation. I love what you're doing. And I believe you're having a big impact on a lot of people.
Well, thank you so much. And so again, we'll have all of your information below, and definitely do not want to miss the summit. That's going to be so full of incredible information. And thank you so much for your time and for your willingness to share with our community. And I look forward to, maybe after the summit, jumping back on a call again, and we can do this one more time.
That would be very cool. Let me just add this. So we're going to give them a link. We're also going to give them a coupon code just for your audience. That'll give them $15 off if they're interested in trying the product.
Lovely.
When they go there, you might wonder, like, what do I recommend? Always the olive oil first. There's two reasons. One, we're a science-backed organization. All the research is on olive oil. Second, you get the highest concentration of the ESS60 molecule in the olive oil. You get a 25% discount if you go on subscription. You can cancel that at any time. Our customer service team has like 850 5-star reviews on Google. They are not trained to talk you out of your subscription. Just take advantage of that discount. Most of our customers end up staying on it anyway, but do take advantage of that discount. And I think that's it. Yeah, and we'll have a link in the show notes for the actual summit. It's free from February 26th through March 3rd. The way that works is we release 8 to 7 videos each day, and you can just click through and watch whatever videos you want. If you want access to all of those videos at your leisure, I think it's just $100, $99 in order to get access to all of those. So it's like 40 to 45 hours of great conversations, just like this one, with longevity experts. So you could hear my process of like absorbing as much information as possible. And then
I can only imagine you must have, like, your brain must have just been like,
I spent an hour.
Kudos to your wife.
Yeah, I spent an hour at a minimum for every speaker that I spoke with, including the hour. No, in addition to the hour where I actually spoke with them.
Yeah.
My goal originally was like 30 to 35-minute interviews. Nothing ended short of 50, or barely any ended short of 50. And then for people like Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, there's so much content out there. I wanted to kind of ask different questions and find out the right questions to include, right? Because some of the backstory or some of their thought processes you specifically do want to include. And I was very lucky. I interviewed Dr. Gundry before his most recent book. It's called Gut Check. And I got a copy of the book. So it's not out yet. And he's got other interviews about his book that are out. So I didn't beat that, but I was probably one of the first to interview him about his book. And it's a phenomenal book. And a lot of what came out of this summit is that your nutrition and your gut biome are paramount.
Fully agree. Wow. Well, cool. Thank you. And again, for everybody listening, like, definitely dive into this information on the summit. It's going to be so worth your while and your time. Chris, thank you so much. Thank you,
Deanna,
everyone.
thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
You bet. Have a wonderful day.